that's how I kind of plan my travels now. If I see a country that the UK or the US advises against going, that's how I know it's going to be a country filled with amazing people. Like,
Hello and welcome to Two Beers Till Takeoff, the podcast inspired by conversations overheard at the airport bar. Join Phil as he grabs a couple of beers and chats with interesting people from around the world, sharing expert knowledge and hilarious stories that you won't find in your guidebook. So pull up a stool and get ready for an adventure as we explore worlds of travel and beyond with Two Beers Till Takeoff.
4 hours in a Taliban headquarters.
I had dog meat in Laos.
Was it golden retriever?
Smack a dirty old smooch on our beautiful fish right here.
He didn't die, but he fell down beside the mountain.
Hello and welcome to Two Beers Till Takeoff. My name is Phil and today's guest is a British vlogger who's visited nearly 100 countries. He's also traveled from Asia to London with no money. What a wild man. Welcome to the show, kieranbrowntravel, aka Kieran Brown.
thank you for having me. It's good to be on.
What's going on, man? Where are you at in the world today?
I'm currently in Budapest. I was just doing a bit of full-on traveling to places like Afghanistan and Pakistan, and decided to go back to England for the Euros. Obviously, was disappointed by the final result, but it was good to see family and friends. But I really dislike living in England, so I just decided to book the cheapest flight I could find out of London yesterday, and I've ended up in Budapest. So I'm solo here for the next 5 days and just gonna check it out.
Cool, man. What do you dislike about England so much? Is it the weather or is it the great food that you guys have?
The cuisine is amazing, mate. The beans on toast and the roast dinners, that's unmatched. But I don't know. It's just a very miserable place. Like, no one is happy. If you try to say hello to someone on the London Underground, they'll think you're an absolute weirdo. Whereas like other places, it's a lot different. Like the weather again is terrible. Like we probably get about a week of sunshine per year, and it's very, very expensive. Like I'm normally based out of cheaper countries and I have a much better standard of living. Go back to England and I'm paying like £5 to £6 for a cappuccino, whereas other places I'm getting it for like £2. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense with my life to be in somewhere like England when I can work from a computer.
Yeah, it's almost like if you don't like the sun and you love football or you really want to follow the Premier League closely, that's maybe your incentives to stay in England, right?
Well, yeah, that's one of the worst things about it. I'm a huge Everton fan, so as much as all my family and I live in London, Everton are based out of Liverpool, so I try to go and see as many games as I can, but because I'm basically full on traveling, it's very, very difficult. And I'm hoping to get to at least one game this season before we move stadiums at the end of August. So yeah.
I've never seen a Premier League game, man. I'd really like to check one out. I don't have a team per se, but I'd definitely like to check it out. So you're now in Hungary. Is that your first time in Budapest?
No, I went to Budapest about 9 years ago with my friends on like a drinking holiday, and I didn't really see much of the country. So yeah, this time's a little bit different. I'm trying to avoid the booze and just do as much sightseeing. But there is a massive heat wave at the moment. It's 36 degrees. I don't know what the conversion is. You're in Fahrenheit, right?
We're Celsius as well. It's just the US.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's 36 degrees, and it's like England. A lot of the places here aren't suited for this sort of weather. So I'm in an apartment at the moment with no aircon. So the last 2 nights sleeping has been a huge issue. I've got a fan, but it's just blowing hot air. So yeah, it's not very comfortable at the moment.
Yeah, dude, that sucks. What have been some of the highlights of your trip up to date? I know you kind of just got there, but some of the sites. Well, what stood out?
Well, yeah, I only arrived yesterday technically because my flight was delayed over 4 hours. So I actually got a bit of compensation from that as well. I got €260, which was 3 times the price of my flight. So that's kind of paid for this trip in itself. But yeah, my favorite thing to do when I get to a new city is either go for a run or go for a very, very long walk. So yeah, I did around 25,000 steps yesterday, just wandering around the city, taking photos and videos of things I look interested in. Been debating whether to vlog it. I vlogged the first day, but with me, because I'm more interested in like dangerous and off the beaten track travel. Places like Hungary, in my opinion, like I wouldn't be interested in watching a vlog from that country myself. So I kind of have the mindset, why would others? So yeah, I don't know whether I just do it for my own memories or just to smash out vlogs in every country I go to. But I'm definitely trying to prioritize YouTube a little bit more than short form at the moment.
Hey, you, come here. I got a secret for you. This episode is sponsored by No Days Wasted, a leader in the hangover supplement. This episode is sponsored by No Days Wasted, a leader in the This episode is sponsored by No Days Wasted, a leader in the hangover supplement industry. Listeners can now get 15% off their next purchase by using promo code 2beers in all caps at checkout. Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like it's definitely a country that has a lot of it's got a beaten path, right? There's a lot of kilometers on the especially Budapest. But yeah, I get where you're coming from, where you don't want to just remake what everybody's doing, but at the end of the day, something crazy could happen too, right? So
yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm up in awe about it. But
are you planning to do the Turkish baths?
I did them the last time. That was the one touristy thing I did the last time I went to Budapest. So yeah, I'm not going to bother doing it this time. But it's just all the other, like the top 5, top 10 things you see on Instagram and TikTok. I've just been like checking them out, and yeah, like, but still been trying to keep up my fitness as well. I joined the gym for the week, but yeah, it's more just to relax, focus, be a little bit into a different scenery than England. And yeah, I've got a lot more off the beaten track travels coming up in the next few weeks.
Cool. What's in the plans in the next few weeks?
So I'm going to country 99, which is going to be Belarus, which it's pretty hard to get to. I had to go for a fixer and get special permission to go there as a British citizen because they're big allies of Russia. And then I'm actually visiting Ukraine as well. So that will be my 100th country. So I thought I'd choose a more interesting one to visit for my 100th. And then after that, I think I'm going to be going to Moldova and a place called Transnistria, which is like a self-governed region that wants to be its own country but isn't recognized by any other country in the world at the moment.
Yeah, I listen, I've never been, but I know a few people that have been on this podcast, and it just sounds like Looney Tunes.
Yeah, see, these sort of places are the things that actually interest me now. Like there's a few countries, maybe like 3 or 4 countries in Europe I've not finished yet. For example, one of them being San Marino, and it just doesn't excite me one single bit. Whereas like when I got to Pakistan, when I got to Afghanistan, like I got like butterflies in my stomach because I was like not necessarily scared, but I was excited. And I think places like Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, like because of what's going on at the moment, I get that kind of feeling. Like it's like a sense of danger but excitement at the same time, which is kind of what I've been chasing recently, because like just going to all the same old boring, like really well-traveled countries, it just doesn't excite me as much as it used to.
Yeah. Have you heard of, like, I've had people that were in Ukraine, during the conflict, more closer to the beginning of the conflict. Have you gotten an update on the situation in Ukraine and what to expect from people that have recently been there? Yeah,
so obviously I try not to watch the news, but I know a children's hospital in Kiev was bombed quite recently. We was going to be going to Kiev, but I think we're just going to stay in Lviv, which is on the border, and then go down to Odessa from Transnistria, which is like the coastal region. Ideally, Ukraine was always like one of my top places I wanted to visit. I wanted to go to like Chernobyl, but it's just not safe as it's well too close to the conflict. I think it might even be in the occupied regions that Russia have taken. So yeah, like obviously if it ever goes back to normal, then I'd love to check out the country in a different manner. But yeah, like I am country counting. I like to go to off the beaten tracks, and there's not really much in Europe I haven't visited yet. So yeah, I think now's the time because I'm going to be in that area anyway. So yeah.
I think also a potential impact, like yourself. I don't really watch the news, but I was listening to a Joe Rogan Joe Rogan podcast where he had Annie something on recently, and they were just talking about kind of the news, I think, of last week. And there was, I think, a bomb launched from Ukraine that hit citizens in Russia. That's I think, an American weapon.
Do you think that was the catalyst of what the retaliation to the children's hospital in Kiev was then, maybe?
Maybe. But it's this woman that wrote a book of what it would be like if there was a nuclear holocaust, like minute per minute, what it would look like. And it's just like, fuck.
I think both sides want to avoid that because at the end of the day, if one country nukes another, then there's going to be measures in place for them to be nuked back. So it's kind of like a suicide mission on both parties. So
yeah,
it's not even the stereotypical war that we've witnessed the last hundreds of years. It's just going to be complete annihilation on both sides. So I don't think realistically anyone wants that.
Yeah, I'm not going to ruin the podcast for people that want to listen to it, but they discussed this as well, and they discussed that there was a guy in the 80s. His name was like Petrov, and he was a person that's like running the missiles. And some of the data that they received was saying that the Americans were sending their nukes at them. And he found some sort of inconsistency in the data, being like, why would they only send one, where like you typically send all your nukes at once, you know what I mean, to kind of end the threat? And he would have had clearance to press the button or to escalate it to be the button to be pressed for it to be kind of end of the world. And because he hesitated, we're still here. So it could almost be an accident with that many nukes.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the butterfly effect? Like everything happens for a reason. Like it's like whenever something negative happens to me in life, like I used to get upset about it, but now in the grand scheme of things, it probably happened for a specific reason to make me then be where I am today. So yeah, everything does happen for a reason.
And I mean, in terms of butterfly effect, recently Trump got shot.
Yeah. He'll probably get the presidency now because of that.
I'd say so. It's pretty crazy. Like, I don't know if you saw that graphic that shows his head turned a certain way, and if turned another way, like he'd be dead.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah,
like, this is a political podcast, but
yeah, it's weird because people are saying it's all like a conspiracy theory and it was planned, but I don't know. Like, I kind of find US politics more as like an entertainment thing as opposed to it being serious. Like, and I think a lot of the outside world kind of finds that as well. It's like very dramatized and it's entertaining to watch. It's nothing like the UK politics. Well, even though we're kind of a joke as well, it's the US is definitely more entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it's definitely the world's reality show. But like just like you're saying, British prime ministers and politicians, it's completely different. Same thing in Canada, man. Like, I think in the debate they say sorry if they like interrupt each other. It's very civil.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's crazy though. You think about it, man. So Trump getting shot, he's not the only politician. It's a rough year for politicians. You think about it. There's the Slovakian prime minister that got shot 5 times. Mm-hmm. The South Korean opposition leader got stabbed in the neck. Mexico had its deadliest election where 37 candidates running for office were killed.
Didn't the Iranian president get killed in a helicopter crash? Or yeah, it's been a bad year.
Yeah, it's a rough year, and here's to hoping that the butterfly effect sways us in the right direction and we're able to keep traveling. Yeah. Anyways, let's get back to traveling. So how'd you get your start traveling?
So when I was about 20, one of my friends asked if I wanted to do like the classic Southeast Asia backpacking trip. So, you know, the stereotypical people go to Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. So I was working as a manager of a nightclub and I asked for 3 months off and they said no. So the next day I just quit. I'd been working there for like nearly 3 or 4 years. So it was very sudden. But yeah, we did this 3-month trip, and I fell in love with travel there and then. And that 3-month trip actually ended up becoming a year. I didn't go home, and I just kind of used the Skyscanner feature where you can search for everywhere, like as the cheapest thing. So, like, say, for example, you was in Bangkok and you select everywhere, you can see all the cheapest countries to fly to from your starting location. Yeah, we from doing that, we ended up in some places that we didn't plan to go to, such as like Taiwan, South Korea, Japan. Yeah, and during that like year, I went to like pretty much all of Southeast Asia, and yeah, it just made me realize I never wanted to go back home and have the traditional like 9 to 5 job. So yeah, I after that I did go back for a little bit to save up money, and then from there, like that just re-emphasized why I didn't want to do that. And then I traveled a little bit more and decided to get a working holiday visa in Australia, and I was kind of working whilst traveling whilst in Australia, and the wage there is amazing compared to England. Like it's the same sort of price, but you get so much more for your money. So I saved up a huge chunk working in Australia, and then just kept traveling basically. Did the same sort of thing, and then when I did run out of money, I moved to New Zealand, did the same thing, working holiday visa. During the time I was in New Zealand was when COVID happened and everywhere went into lockdown. But with New Zealand, they had a different approach where they stopped people from leaving the country and they stopped people from entering the country. So for a huge portion of the COVID era, we had no cases. So I was just able to work as usual, save loads of money. There were still restrictions in place in the country, but it just kind of meant that it was hard for me to spend my money whilst I was still making. So, and I also like dabbled in a bit of like crypto and trading. So with the money I was saving, got quite lucky because it was like the bull market, and I ended up managing to like get quite a decent amount of money, which meant that I was able to travel like basically full time for about 3 years, like going anywhere I wanted to.
Fuck GameStop or?
It wasn't GameStop. It was a few other altcoins which have now eventually like rug pulled. I feel like I got into a pyramid scheme at the very bottom, rode it to the top, and managed to be smart with the money I was making. But
congrats.
yeah, I'd been to probably about 70 countries by then, and I hadn't even made content, like, which was one of my biggest mistakes I did. Like, I was making, like, taking photos and videos for my Instagram stories, but I never actually made videos or content. So I kind of networked with the right people. They got me onto the right track. And then, yeah, I started to document my travels. And from there, it's done well. Like, I've had like very, very good growth on my TikTok, my Instagram. I've been able to get monetized now. I've been offered brand deals with SIM card companies, UGC. So it's basically meant that I can now supplement my travel like just purely from content creation, which is what I always wanted.
Nice. Well, congrats. It's awesome that you got the funds to be able to do that and, you know, make this your full-time job.
Yeah, thank you.
We discussed this briefly. Southeast Asia. I just booked a flight yesterday to Japan. So our honeymoon, we're starting in Japan.
Okay, well, Japan is my favorite country out of all 98 that I visited. I haven't actually been back since the first time I went, and I went as a broke backpacker. So obviously going back there now, when you don't have to worry as much about money, I feel like my experience would be even like better than what it was. But yeah, when I went to Japan the first time, I did 3 weeks there. I loved Tokyo. I went to Fuji. It's like where the mountain. I climbed the mountain as well. Like I wasn't meant to. It was during the off season, so we had to climb over the barriers. The weather wasn't the best, and there was no like rest stations. But it was one of the most memorable things that I've done. But like around Fuji, there's all these nice little villages. You can rent bicycles and drive around the lakes. It was just very, very like aesthetically pleasing, and Japan as a whole is just so technologically advanced. Like I was there about 8 years ago, and I already thought it was more advanced than what, let's say, England is today. Like I was being served by like robot waiters. There's vending machines everywhere. It's just very, very high tech. So I don't even know what it's going to be like now.
No, man, probably just float over there now.
Yeah. Plus, I really like neon light, like nighttime photography when you see like the pictures and everything's like lit up. So places like Japan and South Korea have always been like places that I've enjoyed going to purely just because of that.
Cool. Is there something off the beaten path that people don't typically do in Japan that maybe you did or you'd like to do?
Yes, there's something that I didn't do, but I'm definitely going to do it when I go back to Japan. I can't remember the name, but there's an island off the coast of Japan that is like Chernobyl, where nothing has been touched since I think the 80s. So you can go on tours there, and like I think overnight everyone was evacuated. So you go into like the grocery stores, and there'll still be like food from the 80s with the exact same like labels on them. There'd be like school books, like people's houses. They didn't even have time to pack up, and you have access to go and see all of this. And obviously you can't stay there long because the radioactive levels are still high, despite it being like, I think over 40 years ago. But stuff like that is stuff that I'm really interested in. So yeah, the next time I go to Japan, I'll be trying to do that for sure.
Sweet. That's a great answer.
Well, if you're going there on a honeymoon, I don't know if that's
that's probably not the one. Yeah. Also, I guess just question off of that. Give me your top 3 Southeast Asian countries, and I guess include kind of the circle around those countries.
Well, it's when you ask this question, I feel like it needs to be like, what 3 countries do you love the most, and what 3 countries could you see yourself living in?
Tell me where to go for my honeymoon.
Okay, so my favorite place in the whole world, like individually, is Bali, but that's in terms of like living. I've been there probably about 8 times. I just love the standard of life there. Everyone's friendly. You can be very healthy. Sorry, there's really good gyms. Everyone's happy there. The vibe is just amazing. But in terms of my favorite 3 countries in Southeast Asia, I'd probably go Japan, Indonesia, and Thailand.
Bottom 3?
Brunei, not for any reason other than I just found the place to be quite boring. It's very strict Muslim. It's a very small country. Everything closes at like 6 p.m. Yeah, I spent a couple of days there, and I just found it to be like very uninteresting. Sorry, but the only other country I can say that, like, to be honest, I liked all of Southeast Asia, but maybe Timor-Leste. That was one I went to recently, and I enjoyed it. The people were nice, but it was just very expensive for what it is. It's a very poor country, but they use the US dollar, so it makes the price like a lot more than anywhere else. Like, it's still, I think it used to be part of Indonesia, and there's quite a dark history behind the place. There was like a mass genocide that happened in the 90s, and it's a very new country. It only became a country in 2002. So yeah, just from that, like, I would say it's worth visiting, but I wouldn't stay there more than a week.
All right, let's get to Q&A and get to know you a bit better.
Q&A.
So first question, hot or cold?
Hot for sure.
Guy doesn't like England, so. Beach or mountains?
Probably mountains. Like, I can appreciate a beach, but I'm not one of those people that will just sunbathe. Like, I don't like being just out in the sun. So yeah, probably mountain. I've done a few hikes, and yeah, like, I'm not a massive mountain kind of fan, but yeah, if I had to choose, I'd probably pick that.
Have you done South America?
Only Colombia. I still need to. I've done Central America. I've done Canada all the way down to Colombia, but I stopped there. So I need to give myself more time to do all of that.
Dude, Peru, Brazil, amazing.
Yeah, I've heard amazing things about Peru.
Yeah. Bus or train?
Train. I don't like buses. Trains, I actually enjoy.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs. 100 times dogs. I don't particularly like cats, but yeah, I'm definitely a dog man.
My guy. Top or bottom bunk?
Bottom, because if I stay in hostels now, I'm 29, so I don't tend to stay in hostels, but if I do and I'm on the bottom, I can like hang a towel like from the top going down to the bottom. So kind of gives yourself like a curtain. But yeah, the top, I feel like you're just too exposed to everything.
If you could have a beer with one person from history, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Ooh. Probably Donald Trump. I just think he'd be really funny to talk to. Not that I'm a fan of him. I just think he'd be a very interesting character.
Yeah, he would be. He would definitely be someone. I don't think he does podcasts.
He did one with the Nelk Boys, I think.
Oh yeah,
yeah, but I think he's I think Nelk are Canadian, but yeah, I think he's quite in with them. So I think he did like 1 or 2 podcasts with them, but YouTube took it down because it's controversial.
Yeah, definitely would be an interesting dude to listen to, I guess. Have you ever been to jail?
Yes, once, but it actually wasn't travel related. It was I was outside a nightclub and someone threatened to rape my little sister. So yeah, I in a drunken rage I hit him and there was police around, but it was like it was just one night in the jail kind of thing. But yeah, other than that, I've been to some dangerous countries, but I've not actually been detained or anything.
Dude, I was telling you before this that I had to take some Q&A questions out, like where's the cheapest beer you've had? I've replaced it with the jail one. The jail one's been fire up to date. What's the weirdest food you've eaten?
Oh, the weirdest food. I actually have a list of this. Let me try and remember. Yeah. So I was in Lapland in Finland, and I try to go for an Indian meal in every single country I visit because it's my favorite cuisine. And I walked past an Indian restaurant in Lapland and they were selling reindeer tikka masala. So yeah, I thought I'd try that. And yeah, that's probably the most unique sort of thing. I've tried all the traditional, like when you go to Thailand, you have the insects, but I think eating reindeer was probably the weirdest thing that I've had.
Cool. I don't know if you've already done this or not, but have you considered turning this into the pizza review that Dave Portnoy does from Barstool?
A few people did say that I should have done that, but then I've been to countries that I'm not going to go back to and I didn't make the content for it. So I feel like I would be starting it well too late. But if I had the idea, like, as I said, I didn't really even make content until I got to about my 70th country. But that could have been a good idea if I had actually planned it from the start.
Dude, you might be late on the Indian food in every country, but I think you'd be a first for reindeer in every country.
Well, I don't think it's possible.
Dude, Canada, we got some. I've gone reindeer hunting.
I think only the cold countries have it. Like, I highly doubt I'd find reindeer in Thailand.
Yeah, you do like Russia, Canada, US, Alaska, probably. Then you're kind of done. What's something you never travel without?
My phone, or my passport, obviously. But I feel like with my phone, it's like my all round. I use it to plan, sometimes to take content. Yeah, I just feel like I wouldn't be able to live with that. My phone actually broke once when I was traveling in Thailand. I was there like maybe about 8 years ago for a thing called Songkran, which is a Thai New Year where the whole country turns into like a big water fight. I was moving from one hostel to another, and some little Thai lady threw a bucket of water off her balcony onto me, and my phone got destroyed. And I didn't, because I was a broke backpacker there, I had no phone for about 2 months, and all I had was a giant iPad. So it was just not socially acceptable to be whipping out an iPad to take photos, to try and like use for translate. So yeah, that was a nightmare, and it made me realize how self-reliant I am on my phone.
Yeah. You almost have like if you can communicate, you'd be like, I just can't see from close up or something. You know what I mean? Just I need it in big font.
Yeah, imagine trying to navigate on a bike in Vietnam with an iPad rather than a phone. Like it doesn't fit in the front. I'm like, yeah, it was just the logistics behind that trip just became a nightmare when my phone got broke.
But you could probably play like Candy Crush with like better, you know.
Yeah, or at least if I'm watching films, it's a bigger screen. But
Yeah, dude,
yeah.
that's perfect. What is your favorite world attraction?
To be honest, I don't really like the whole like world wonders and stuff. Like none of them have really stood out to me. Like obviously the Chichen Itza in Mexico was good. The Taj Mahal was good, but I don't know, like places like Afghanistan where I didn't expect it to be this naturally beautiful, or northern Pakistan where you're just driving through the mountains and like you just got 360 degrees of like beautiful scenery, and like I feel like places like that are my favorite. Like they don't actually have a name, it's just the whole place in itself.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's the ones that sometimes surprise you, that make a lasting effort, instead of going to Paris and seeing the Eiffel Tower and be like, it's exactly like.
Yeah, like places where you go where it's just going to be full of tourists with selfie sticks, like phones. I can't actually think of anything worse. Like when I went to the Taj Mahal last year, I turned up there like at 3:45 in the morning just so that I could get there like before all the tourists. I had maybe about 5 to 10 minutes of seeing it like unobstructed before it just became like an absolute jungle after that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
ruins the experience.
Mm,
But at least you were there with your iPad, right? Just fucking.
yeah, God. That was
Which country has the best cuisine?
India. India like without a doubt for me. But the weird thing is I used to be a very fussy eater. So when I explained that I went on my first like Southeast Asia trip when I was like 19, I didn't eat any Asian food. Like I got to Thailand and McDonald's was my first meal. And I think as I've grown older, I've tried more and more things to the point where I kind of eat everything now. I went to India for the first time when I was 23 and I'd never tried a curry, and I tried it for the first time in Goa, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe I've wasted like a huge portion of my life like outright refusing to eat it. Like when my family went to like curry houses in England, I would sulk and not come. Like it's just, yeah, I was full of regrets with that. Like when I went to Japan, I didn't actually ever try Japanese food, and now I love it. So like it's kind of like I have to go back to these places now to appreciate the cuisine now that I actually eat it. But close second to India, I'd probably say Afghanistan. Like I love like meat kind of dishes, and a lot of their cuisine is based around that, and they make like fresh bread with every meal. And yeah, I think that combination is just elite, like meat and bread, like it just absolutely slaps. So yeah, probably those two are like my standout. And then if I had to go for like a more like traditional kind of food that everyone likes, I'd probably go for Mexican food. Although I prefer Mexican food outside of Mexico, and I think that's because my taste buds have kind of got like accumulated to like Tex-Mex. Like I like the whole Chipotle type like burritos, stuff like that. And when I went to Mexico, I did love the food, but I think a lot of the food that you find in Mexican restaurants outside of Mexico, they don't actually do in Mexico.
Right.
But then I found the same sort of thing with Italy as well. Like people say like, oh, like they like garlic bread, but in Italy that's not a thing. They don't actually have garlic bread. So it's just kind of, I think they adjust their palates to fit people outside of the countries, and then when it goes to the countries in itself, it's different.
I think you can get garlic bread at Olive Garden. So theory proved.
Yeah.
Tell me your best travel hack.
My best travel hack. I've traveled around the world for about 7 years, and I've never ever paid for carry-on. So I have. Hang on, let me get it. This is my bag. It's too big to fit. Like whenever you go to like the budget flights, and they like you has to fit in here, it has to weigh a certain amount. This bag weighs around 14 kg, which I think the the limit allowed is only 7 kg. Yeah, I've got this filled to the brim, and I've never ever paid for a suitcase, and that's down to a lot of different measures. But I'll check in online. I have no kind of human interaction with anyone until I board the plane. If I have to, I know this is quite frowned upon, but I used to travel with people. So if we had to go up to the check-in desk, I would be like, you wait here with all the bags. I'll go up and get my ticket. They'll be like, have you got like any other bag? And I'll just have a little tiny backpack, and I'll be like, no, this is all I've got. So they'll put like the luggage tag on my little small bag. And then when I go back to my bag, my friend will then go up and do the same thing. I'll take the luggage tag off my small bag and then put it onto my big one. And then when I get through security, I'll buy a bottle of water from duty free, get the big duty free bag, and put my backpack in there with my laptop and stuff. And because you're actually allowed to bring duty free onto the plane. Yeah, I probably took about 1,000 flights, and I've only ever been pulled up once on a cheap Ryanair flight and had to pay £40. So I think the risk is much better than the risk is worth the reward, to be honest.
Yeah, dude, I think this is definitely a hack for the backpackers, right? The ones that are, that's the difference between a meal or two. You know what I mean? Like that's.
Yeah. Well, as much as I can afford to check in my bag, but for something that I know that would work for free, I'm like, well, why would I pay nearly the whole price of the fare to have like a suitcase or whatever? And it's just so handy. Like, you don't have to wait at the baggage carousel. Like, you just take your bag out the overhead locker and you're clear immigration and you're set. I've got one other travel hack that I use to get YouTube Premium for free. So what I do is I use a VPN, set it to Pakistan. If I've got a long flight, I'll download all the YouTube videos that I want to watch for the flight, because usually you have to have YouTube Premium to download videos for offline play. But for some reason, I don't know whether this is intended, but if you're under a Pakistan VPN, you can download all the videos that you want. And then, so whenever I have like a 12 or 13 hour flight, I'll have all this educational content on YouTube that I can just sit and watch and not get bored of, as opposed to like Netflix, where I can only watch a couple of episodes and I'll get bored. I feel like YouTube can keep me entertained for the whole thing. So yeah, cool. I've been using that for the last couple of months and it's worked fine for me.
Yeah, dude, that's a great hack. I've never heard of that one. That's great.
Yeah, I stumbled across it by mistake when I was in Pakistan, and it's worked ever since. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about that.
Should maybe not tell YouTube about that one. What is your biggest travel pet peeve?
People that are just rude to like waiters or immigration officers, like people that just like push in line. Like a lot of the time I'll be waiting at like either to get tickets or for a tourist attraction, and you just get self-entitled people that just try to push to the front. It mainly happened in places like India, but it does seem to happen everywhere I go. And yeah, like I get people who are in a rush, but I think maybe because I'm British, like our whole culture is just lining up and like queuing up for things. So I think when people try to get to the front of places, it just rattles me.
Yeah, same. It's like there's order, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I understand there's a lot less people than, for example, like India, where there's a shit ton of people.
Well, yeah. India, I think with India, they've got a huge caste system to the point where there is some very ultra wealthy people in India, and then people just disregard everyone and they think they can have whatever they want whenever they want. And a lot of the time, these are the people that you'll find traveling to Western countries, and then they'll still have the same mannerisms, and they're kind of the ones that will be pushing in. But I think it's just down to they're so used to having everything they want that they just don't really think about what other people are doing.
Yeah, it's annoying for sure. What's your most underrated country?
Probably either Pakistan or Nepal. Pakistan was another country that people tried to advise me not to go, and they told me it was dangerous.
Oh, shit.
I saw lots of like news articles about it not being safe to go to. Like even Peshawar in Pakistan is on the UK do not travel list. And I went there and was met with the kindest people, the most hospitable people. Like everyone just wanted to give me stuff for free. They wanted to show me around. They wanted to house me. And I found that that was the case in all of Pakistan, but in Peshawar, it was even more so. And that was the place that people advised not going to. So yeah, that in that term, it was like, for me, it was underrated because the food's good. The scenery up in the north is some of the best I've ever seen in my life. And the people are just amazing. And then, yeah, Nepal, like, I didn't really know what to expect when I turned up there. And like, it was just full of the most beautiful landscapes and scenery. Like, it's home to Mount Everest. They've got the Annapurna circuit. Like, there's just so much to see and do there as well. And the wildlife was incredible. Like, I was in a place called Chitwan National Park, and I was in a restaurant, and I hear like a gasp, and I look up, and there's just a rhino walking down the street. Like,
What?
yeah, I took a video of it. It went viral on my Instagram. It had a couple of million, but yeah, like it was bizarre. Like, people were eating dinner, and this rhino is just walking on the road. Like, there's tuk-tuks going around the rhino, but yeah, it just seemed so unfussed about what was going on.
Did the rhino obey like traffic laws, like red lights and shit?
Yeah, that's the thing. There was a security guard with a torch that was kind of like guiding it. But I kind of looked into it after and spoke to some of the locals, and apparently this rhino's parents died when it was a kid, and the Nepalese military base used to feed it, so it kind of became domesticated to humans in that respect. But obviously, it still lives in the wild, but every now and then it will come into the town just to say hello to people, and it's like ultra friendly. So yeah, like a lot of people actually see this rhino. There's videos of it like inside an ATM box where there was aircon and stuff. Like, yeah, it was one of those things that you would never expect to see, and it was pretty surreal to actually see it.
Yeah, listen, I've never heard of a village having a pet rhino. That's pretty fucking.
I never had died before that. Like, I went on their safari the next day in Chitwan National Park and saw lots of them in the wild. But obviously, to see one this close up whilst I'm eating dinner and be able to get videos of it was quite incredible, to be fair.
What were the local reaction to the rhino? Was it just like, well, it's just Johnny the rhino?
That's the thing. They seemed so unfazed by it. Like, all the tourists like were gasping, but like security guard, as I said, was just shining a torch to like guide it that way. Like the tuk-tuks were just like using the indicator to overtake it and keep driving. No one stopped. Like, yeah, it was just a tourist taking pictures and videos basically. And then when I posted it, like the Nepalese people replied like he actually has a name. I can't remember the name, but like they've named him like a pet name.
Dude, I think maybe the best crossover possibility of this is Spain and Nepal. I want running with the rhinos. You imagine?
Oh, yeah, that would be fun.
Where's somewhere you'd never go back?
Probably Tajikistan, and that was one of my most recent countries that I've been to. No one was horrible there. Like, the people there were nice, but I just didn't have a very good experience. I just had an amazing month in Pakistan, and followed by that, I crossed into Afghanistan and had a really exciting 2 weeks. And then from there, I crossed from Afghanistan into Tajikistan, and entering the country, I kind of got detained at the border, and leaving the country, I got detained at the border. And the whole time in the country, I spent most of it just driving on very bad condition roads and eating soup 3 times a day. And there was just nothing stand out for me. Like, the landscapes were good, but I'd just been in Afghanistan and Pakistan, which was much better in my opinion. So as much as I don't really like to compare, there just wasn't anything that did it for me there.
Right. And Kieran, am I confusing the two? Sometimes I'll mix the two up because I've never been. Turkmenistan, Tajikistan. Which one's the one that has the dictator and has all the marble? That's Tajikistan?
That's Turkmenistan.
Turkmenistan, okay.
That's a country I still want to go to, but it's hard to get to and very expensive. So I'm hoping if my travel content still continues the way it does, then I might be able to get either a discounted or a like a press trip there eventually if my account grows bigger. But yeah, for now, that's going to be more probably one of the later countries I visit. Like North Korea is a country that I'm going to be going to as soon as the border opens, though.
Nice.
Because they've just recently opened it for the first time since COVID for Russian and Chinese citizens. And that usually means that eventually the rest of the world's going to open if they're finally reopening from COVID. But I've always been wanting to run the marathon there, the Pyongyang Marathon. It used to be every year in April, and it would start in the national stadium, which fits 60,000 people. What Kim Jong-un will do is he'll force all of his like citizens to pack out the stadium. They'll have orchestrators which literally tell the crowd when to clap. It just seems very surreal, but the race will start and finish in a packed out stadium with everyone cheering you on. And then obviously for the duration of the marathon, you're able to like interact with like the locals during the course. And it's kind of like unsupervised for the duration of the run. Like usually if you go to a tour in North Korea, you're only able to go where they tell you to take pictures where they tell you to take pictures. But for the duration of the 26 miles, you're able to like see stuff that you wouldn't usually see on the tour, and obviously interact with people that like cheering you on during the course. So yeah, as soon as the border opens, I'm going to book that and then get training. I've been trying to run like as much as I can recently, but I'm nowhere near ready to do a marathon at the moment.
Dude, if you want a +1 on that, I'd be up for it.
You're more than welcome to join. I think quite a few other people are interested in it as well, but they have given certain times you have to finish the racing, because you can do a marathon, a half marathon, or a 10K. So I don't know what will happen if you don't finish the race in the time. I don't know whether they arrest you or
they execute you.
Yeah, like God knows. Yeah, just probably encourage you to train as much as you can.
Dude, what do you think the aid stations are like?
I don't even know. Yeah,
Just like
it's
rocks?
probably not going to be much. Be surprised if you even get water, but yeah.
Nuclear weapons and rocks or something? Just like what? Where did you experience the least friendly locals?
Austria.
Oh,
yeah, and like I didn't have any like real bad interactions with people. I just found everyone to be really, really rude. Like every now and then, if I see people in the streets, I'll smile at them or say hello. And every time I did that, I was just met with people looking at me like I was a criminal. Like people just like looking, shaking their head when I'm like taking photos and videos. Yeah, I just didn't meet anyone positive in Austria, but I was only there for about 4 days. So I suppose if I spent longer and like spoke to more people, then that could be different. But that's just one on the back of my head that I found, people to be pretty unfriendly. And obviously London as well, like you don't really get people that are friendly in London, but I think that is down to just every major city. Like I feel like it's kind of the same in New York as well. Like I think when you go to like busy cities, people are less friendly, and then as soon as you branch out to like the rural areas of the country, everyone just becomes so much nicer.
Yeah, it's the commute, the amount of people piled on top of each other. Yeah, you can understand why, but it's definitely makes for not friendly people. Where were you the most scared?
So I think because I've traveled basically full time for 7 years, I have become a bit desensitized to danger. Like there's been a couple of experiences where I know I should have felt scared and I didn't, but I think crossing the Torkham border from Pakistan to Afghan was probably the most nervous I felt, and that was just because I didn't know what to expect. It was the most bizarre border crossing I've ever seen. Like there was guards literally whipping people, and for no reason whatsoever. There was people queued up, and you get the like cattle kind of whip. The guards were just literally hitting people. Like we were sat down. Yeah, this was on the Pakistan side, but we were sat waiting for approval to cross, and it wasn't even a waiting room. It was literally like where livestock are held. There was kids playing. There's a game that we used to play at school called British Bulldog, where you had to get from one side to the other, and there'd be someone in the middle that would try to hit. It was basically kids playing that basically with the Pakistan immigration guards, and they wasn't seeing it as a joke. There was Afghan kids trying to cross into Pakistan, and maybe like 20 of them would run at the same time. A couple would get through, but then when they got caught by the Pakistan guards, they would get hit by like the butt end of their rifle. The whole experience was just something that I've never ever seen in my life. I've crossed so many borders and never seen anything like that. So obviously when it was our turn to cross, we had to walk past this guy that's been whipping people for the past 20 minutes. And I was like to my friends, I was like, do you reckon we're going to get whipped here? But they left us alone, thankfully. But yeah, once we got into Afghanistan, we had a 6-hour drive to Kabul, and obviously there's a Taliban checkpoint every, let's say, 15 minutes. So my first like pull up at the Taliban checkpoint, I was extremely nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't had any interaction with them, but it was a positive one. So it kind of set the course for the rest of my stay in the country, and my like nerves just eased more and more the longer I was there. And then another story, when I was leaving Afghanistan and I was about to enter Tajikistan, we got stamped out of Afghanistan, and the Taliban took us to a locked gate. He opened it for us and like said bye to us. And then we had a very long bridge to cross that led us into Tajikistan. It was about a 10-minute walk. And as we crossed, we could see all these sandbags on the Tajikistan side. And there was a guy pointing his rifle at us. And as we got closer, like we were wearing the traditional like Afghan attire as well. Like, so from a distance, he could have thought we were anyone, because a lot of the Taliban are white. Like they're not the stereotypical like brown people with beards. Like a lot of them have like white skin, blue eyes. So as we crossed and got closer, you could see he was visibly shaken. He was probably like he was definitely like a teenager, and I don't think he really saw many people crossing from Afghanistan to Tajikistan. And obviously, as we got closer, we reassured him, like, and he kind of eased off. But the whole day just got worse and worse from there. Like, we were traveling with, so I have a British friend, and then we have a German and American that I was with, traveling through Afghanistan with. Once we got to the immigration, we tried to give him our passport, and it just kept saying like error on the machine. We didn't really know what was wrong. And then the American and the German tried, and they got stamped in completely with no issues. And then when we Googled it, we actually realized that since Brexit, British citizens needed to apply for an e-visa prior to coming into Tajikistan. And you could only get a visa on arrival at the Shanbay airport. And because we crossed via the Shirkan border, there's no way for us to do that. And then I spoke to a few people that I know that had been to Tajikistan. Dan, for example, who you had on the podcast, I spoke to him because he'd done the same thing, trying to apply for an e-visa, and he said that they're notoriously slow and it will take up to 5 days. So the only other option would be for us to go back to Afghanistan without a permit and without a visa, which probably would have meant we would have been arrested by the Taliban, or to sleep on this bridge with nothing there basically until we got approved. But we managed to get in contact with the British Embassy in Dushanbe, who then forwarded it to London. And we had like a back and forth. I got their WhatsApp contact, and they like, it just felt surreal, like basically ringing up the British Embassy and was like, hi, this is going to be a bit of an odd one, but we're 2 British nationals stuck on a bridge between Afghanistan and Tajikistan. And when I said it, there was silence on the end of the line, and they were like, could you just repeat what you said? And like, they were shocked, and they basically asked why we were doing it. We said we're like travel content creators. But they said they can't promise anything, but they came through. They managed to get someone within the Tajikistan visa to approve. They managed to get someone within the Tajikistan embassy to approve our e-visas within 2 hours just before the border closed.
Wow.
And luckily we got stamped through. But yeah, like that would have been a scary moment for me. But the same guy who got stuck was the guy I did Asia to London with no money with. And I feel like we've been put into such stressful situations that stuff like that just doesn't phase us anymore. And in the back of my mind now, it was just like, this is going to make for a good video and it's going to do well on Instagram and TikTok. So, and kids. So, yeah.
Do it for the clicks, baby.
Exactly. I had the same issue leaving Tajikistan as well. We got stuck in the border, but that was for a whole different reason. Like we wasn't having the best of time in Tajikistan, as I said. So we actually left the night before we was meant to, and we paid someone to take us up the mountain. So this is one of the highest border crossings in the world to get from Tajikistan to Kyrgyzstan, and it's up in the mountains. So we paid some guy to take us all the way up, but this border is only open to tourists, like the nationals of Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan can't actually cross this border. So we spent hours getting up there. It was it started to snow like very, very heavy. And when we finally got up there, the guards basically said it was closed, but we already knew it was a 24-hour border. So we had to bribe them. So once we bribed them, they let us pass, but a guard had to come with us into this no man's land because it's like 20 miles of just barren landscape that no country claims. So our car was allowed to take us 10 miles in, and then a car from Kyrgyzstan had to pick us up from the other side. When we got to the halfway point, the snow had got to the point where it would become ridiculous. The car from Kyrgyzstan wasn't able to get up the mountain, and we were like our friends were like, oh well, let's just go back to Tajikistan and we'll go tomorrow. But we had the same issue where we would have had to have got an e-visa again as a British citizen. So it meant we had to sleep in a car in no man's land in thick like snow. It was probably about minus 15 degrees, and there was like snow leopards outside the car.
Snow leopards?
Yeah, it's like a hotspot for snow leopards because no one lives there. Like I feel like they thrive there. But
the tourists.
Yeah, and bearing in mind there was 6 of us in a car that only fits like 4 people, so it was very cramped. And then luckily after about 2 hours we saw headlights coming up the mountains, and the car from Kyrgyzstan had finally managed to make it up there. So that was probably one of the most relief we've ever felt. And I think we were so stressed and like just like fed up of how like full on this travel trip was that shortly after in Kyrgyzstan, that's when I flew back to England to just chill out, because we were meant to do like Kazakhstan and then maybe Turkmenistan and stuff. But yeah, I feel like I just needed to relax after that trip.
Fuck, dude. Yeah, that. yeah. I mean, getting guns pointed at you, 2 shitty border crossings, snow leopards biting at the doors trying to get in. Like, that's pretty fucking wild.
Yeah, but it all makes for great stories. Like, these exciting memories. Like, you wouldn't get any of them stories just traveling in Budapest, where I am now. So
0 snow leopards in Budapest.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, listen, I think that's a great segue to, you kind of talked about it shortly, that, you know, you had done some crazy stuff, and that one of the things that you did was you traveled from Asia to London with no money. So I think that this is a great segue to, let's go talk about it.
Story time.
Yeah, so Asia to London happened 1.5 years ago. So this was probably what was the catalyst for me to start making content properly, because prior to that challenge, I was very shy as a person. I was extremely camera shy. I didn't know how to talk to a camera. I cared too much about what other people think. The thought of rejection absolutely terrified me. By doing this challenge, it kind of cured all of that. And that was because ultimately, if I didn't ask people for help, I wasn't going to get help. Like, I had to explain to people what I was doing, vlogging, walking down the street, like with a camera. Like, it got to the point where prior to that, doing that challenge, I would have been absolutely terrified to walk, like vlogging, like, because I'd care too much about what people think. Now I can just walk around in a busy street and not give 2 shits, honestly. But yeah, the whole challenge was basically to get from Asia to London with no money whatsoever. So it would only be via land, and I had to rely on the kindness of strangers for food, accommodation, and transport. And I couldn't get any help from anyone that I'd met prior to the challenge started. So it had to be only random people that I hadn't met yet.
Cool.
So we started on the Asian side of Istanbul, mainly for clickbait for the video, but Istanbul is a city divided by 2 continents. The east side is Asia, the west side is Europe. So we started on the east side and had to make our way all the way back to London without spending a penny. And we were fully expecting this to take months. Like when I said bye to my family and friends, I thought it was going to be for a very, very long time, but it only actually took us 15 days, which just kind of
15 days?
Yeah, 15 days. It was very, very full on. And we only actually slept rough twice out of them 15 days. The rest of the days, people were willing to help by either giving us a couch, like a bed. We slept in people's cars a few times. But yeah, the whole experience was probably one of the most memorable things that I've done. And we raised money for homeless charities along the way. We were featured on BBC News twice. We made we were in lots of newspaper articles, and it just kind of highlighted everything that I wanted it to, that there is kindness everywhere in the world, even places that people would consider more dangerous or less friendly.
That's really cool. And when you guys started from Istanbul, did you have a rough route of how you were going to get there? Or were you just like, let's just hitchhike and we'll see what happens?
We kind of had a set route we wanted to go, but at the end of the day, beggars can't be choosers. We basically would write a sign with the next major city that was west, and just however far we could get. And I kind of found that the people on the challenge that most were inclined to help were actually Muslim people, and I think that is down to their religion. Like, they love to make outsiders feel welcome, and they were the people that went ridiculously out of their way, whether that be like giving us their own, like they didn't, like, for example, there was a guy that we met in France, an Algerian man who was Muslim, and he didn't have anywhere to stay because he was quite a poor man, but we had only met him like maybe 3 hours prior. He showed us all around Dunkirk in France, and then he was like, we haven't got anywhere for you to stay because our house is really too small. But he gave us his car keys and was like, you can sleep in our car today. And like, to have that much faith in someone he's only just met, like, if we were not good people, we could have just stole his car. Like, but he didn't have anything, and he still went out of his way to give us that. His wife fed us, like, he allowed us to have a shower in his house. He brought us down biscuits and a hot drink to the car, like. Being in Dunkirk homeless in Dunkirk is quite a dangerous place to be because there's a lot of refugees that are trying to get to the UK, and he said it's not safe. And that night it was very bad weather as well, so that guy is a lifesaver. But back to your question, there wasn't a particular route we were trying to get. It was just to try and get as close to England as fast as possible. So there was quite a few little detours that we ended up on, but the main goal was just to head west.
It's really cool that you say, just to share your experience of how kind people are. I had a guy who came on and he biked across the US, Daniel Troya, I think his name was. And he biked across the US and he documented it. It's on Amazon Prime. And he basically went around the US on a bike with no money. Same concept as you guys. And just, it's really cool to compare contrast both stories, because he kind of says the same thing. How people went out of their way. He'd just be at grocery stores kind of being like, hey, like I'm hungry type thing, like anything would help. And people would just take him in, bring him into their homes. And it's pretty remarkable. We're fed so much negativity through like the news and social media, and to see that that there is so much positivity in the world when you really see it. A man that has a home too small for you to accommodate you, but he's like, here's my fucking car.
I know, it just highlights everything that I kind of already knew, but it's kind of like that's how I kind of plan my travels now. If I see a country that the UK or the US advises against going. That's how I know it's going to be a country filled with amazing people. Like the government and the people within the country aren't the same thing. So if a country has bad diplomatic relations with any of the Western countries, that's not down to the people within that country. And that completely shows going to Afghanistan. Like the people in Afghanistan had no bad blood whatsoever about what has gone on in their country the last 20 years. Like we were with Americans and they were so friendly and nice. And it just shows everything that the news says isn't right when it comes to visiting countries. Like I went to Lebanon shortly after the explosion in Beirut, and they were going through like a huge economical crisis where there was no petrol. People were queuing up for days just to put gas in their car. Their currency completely flopped to the point where people that had lots of money just became like ridiculously in poverty overnight. And that was another country that CNN was saying to advise against going. And I went to this country where people were going through some of the toughest times they've ever had in their life, but they were going out of their way to make me, a tourist, feel welcome. Like they were inviting me into their places, they were cooking for me, they wanted to show me around their country. And this was when they were going through probably one of the worst hardships as they could, and they were still like looking out and wanting to give other people a positive like aspect for their country.
Pretty wild, man. There's some good ones out there. We just we need to highlight them more.
Exactly.
So Kieran, so your cruise through, where did you end up going along the way?
So from Turkey, we then crossed into Bulgaria. That was the next country, and we had such a good first day in Turkey. We managed to get all the way from Istanbul to the Bulgarian border in the first day, and we kind of thought that the challenge was going to be that easy the whole way through. But the next few days then became a lot more tough. Like Bulgaria, I found was pretty hard to get help. Like I remember one of the standout moments, I went to a fruit vendor and I asked if they had any rotten fruit they were going to throw away, and she, with Google Translate, and she looked at me like I was a piece of dirt, like, and like got her friend, and they kind of like laughed. And obviously that wasn't good for the confidence, but yeah, like that was the first day, and I kind of knew that Bulgaria would be harder to do this challenge. And then we couldn't sleep anywhere. We didn't find anywhere to sleep that night, so we ended up finding an abandoned construction site and we slept there. And then in terms of food, we were kind of relying on like berries and plums off trees for a lot of the challenge. Like during the 15 days, I lost 6 kilograms of weight. So it's probably good that the challenge didn't go on for months. Otherwise, yeah, I would have been very, very skinny.
Yeah. For the Americans, just so they understand the conversion, that's like 70, 80 pounds. I'm kidding.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, we're from Bulgaria. I think it's not because it happened 1.5 years ago. I think it was Serbia, Croatia, and then as I started to get more west, more and more people spoke English. So like prior to that, we were having to use Google Translate a lot. So people were helping us out, but it was all through Translate.
Right.
And then yeah, as we got more Western, there started to become more rules. Like we nearly got arrested on the highway in Slovenia because we were hitchhiking, and I think we got so used to it just kind of being more lawless the more towards Asia, that in the EU there's all these like restrictions. And yeah, like I didn't realize that you're not actually allowed to stand on the highways in the European Union. So someone called the police on us, and eventually a police car stopped, and he was furious with us. Like he took our passports and then told us to walk back to the petrol station that was maybe half a mile back in the direction that we came from. And then yeah, once he eventually managed to do a U-turn and cross back, yeah, he was screaming at us. Like I'd set up my like video camera to kind of like capture the interaction, but he wanted to fine us 150 euros, and we were explaining that we were doing this challenge with no money, and he was like, no, you are lying. So luckily, because we had the videos on YouTube, like we showed him the YouTube channel. But yeah, he was really not happy about it. But we
didn't turn into a subscriber.
Well, no, I don't think so. No, but we were quite persistent in the fact that we had no money to pay, and then eventually he gave us our passports and said that if he catches us again in Slovenia, it's not going to end well for us. So yeah, from there it became a lot harder to hitchhike, especially the next country was Germany, and they've got the Autobahn where like there's no speed limit there. So it just kind of meant that all of our like hitchhiking had to be done in like service station, like petrol stations, and it just made it a lot harder in that respect. But
approaching people is a little weird.
Well, yeah, like a lot of the time we were just holding a sign up and giving people puppy dog eyes, but it got to the point where we had to just cold approach people, and that kind of worked. And eventually it's just kind of like a waiting game when you're hitchhiking. Like 1 minute you could be trying for like less than 30 seconds and you get picked up, and then other times we were waiting for like 9 hours. So it's just kind of, yeah, it's just all about the percentages. Eventually someone's going to pick you up, but it's just when.
Yeah, dude, that's pretty wild, dude. That's some, take some balls to still do that. Cause I mean, you don't know who's going to pick you up.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of the people that picked us up were quite the older generation that would then say that they've hitchhiked quite a bit in their youth, so they kind of know how it feels. Obviously I've got that kind of perception now. Like if I'm driving and I'm not with a girl or someone that I'm responsible for their safety, if they don't look like a freak, I'll pick them up. And that's because I know now how it feels like for me to do it myself. But there was one instance where an 18-year-old girl picked us up. Bearing in mind, I'm 6'2", covered in tattoos, and my friend's like smaller, but she saw us on the side of the highway and decided to pick us up. Yeah, we asked, like, we said to her, have you picked up hitchhikers before? And she said, no, never. And we were like, well, why did you pick us up? And she just said we had friendly faces, but she ended up driving us 12 hours across 2 countries.
What?
This was an 18-year-old girl traveling by herself. So it just kind of like broke the whole stereotype of who we were trying to hitchhike to, because usually if we saw like a girl driving a car, we wouldn't even like bother. But it just kind of showed that anyone's actually going to be wanting to do it if their frame of mind is right.
Yeah, dude, what a legend. 2 countries. Fuck, that's huge. But you guys did it in 15 days. That's pretty remarkable. And I think, I guess if people want to kind of follow along, because you have documented this on your YouTube and on your Instagram and your TikTok.
So I recorded it. So with the whole YouTube thing, this was obviously the first time I'd ever like vlog. So looking back now, like, the raw content and the concept is good, but I can do so much better when it in terms of like vlogging. And then I was making these videos and posting them the same day. So it was a lot of work like during the challenge. And then I was posting them on short form as well. But like quite recently, I've actually gone back and like repurposed the videos with a better voiceover. I've used some of the YouTube clips within the short form content on Instagram. And like the videos are just like 100 times better than what I made them the first time, because I'm now better at doing voiceovers and better at editing videos. So I thought the challenge, it got quite a lot of like outreach, but I feel like it didn't do as much justice as I wanted to. That's why I spent some time repurposing it. So yeah, on my Instagram and TikTok quite recently, I posted the daily kind of recap of what I was doing, and yeah, they did quite well. I've had a few newspaper articles reach out wanting to do stories on them as well. So, nice. Yeah.
And I guess, Kieran, listen, this was great. Can you remind, I guess, people where they can find your content?
Yeah. So my channel name is kieranbrowntravel across all social medias, whether that be YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. So, yeah, I'm just going to be smashing out loads and loads of content. And I'm going to be going to some very exciting countries coming up. Like ideally in September, I'll be going to Somalia and then West Africa as well. So quite looking forward to that, because that's probably going to be the most stressful region that I've ever traveled, because the logistics behind West Africa is just very hard where it comes to bribery. It's just not convenient. It's no tourism infrastructure. So yeah, it should be fun.
Right on. Let's get into the Patreon. I want to talk about your tips on bribery. I think that'd be really useful. So thank you so much for coming on, and let's hop on.
Thank you for listening to Two Beers Till Takeoff. Do you want free additional content or just to stay connected with the show? Then give us a follow on our social media platform. That means TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. Are you in need of podcast production services, video editing, or anything in between? Then look no further than Strut Sound Productions, the official producer of the Two Beers Till Takeoff podcast. Music produced by Alex Gagne. Check out his work in our show notes. Voiceover done by Viking Leo K. See you next week on Two Beers Till Takeoff.